Mm, okay.
Mr. Olu, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Noga, and I'm going to be your MC for the next hour or so during tonight's virtual event. Thank you for joining us. I'd also like to thank the amazing staff at WINA for this idea and the Canadian Red Cross for sponsoring this series of virtual events. Some general housekeeping points to keep us all organized tonight. I'm going to begin with a quick introduction to the WINA organization before bringing in our two guest speakers for the evening. We will wrap up with a question and answer session for both speakers, so please use the chat feature on the side of your screen to submit your questions, and we will select some of them to ask. We will be sending out a post-event survey for everyone to fill out, and we would appreciate it if you took the time to submit so we can continue to host the best events for you. Our next Wellness for International Students virtual events is on November 4th. Please remember to register if you would like to join us then. Now I'd like to start by giving everyone some quick background information before introducing our guest speakers. The Welcoming Intercultural Newcomers Association, WINA for short, and formerly known as the Welcome Barbecue Association, is an intercultural organization based in Halifax, Nova Scotia. WINA started 15 years ago as a not-for-profit organization to host the annual Newcomers Students Barbecue and is now evolving to respond to the new challenges facing international students in Halifax today. As a hub for welcoming newcomer students, our members come from diverse cultural, ethnic, and religious backgrounds. Through our events, WINA provides international students in Halifax with the right resources to help them learn about their new community. WINA also implements its diversity strategy to provide programs and services to empower our students and break down traditional barriers. Areas of focus include securing employment, mental health education, and cultural understanding. In addition, over 70% of WINA's core activities are dedicated to direct service delivery, such as settlement, employment, and social support and mentorship. Now let's move on to why we're all here today. In August of 2020, WINA began participating in a special project funded by the Canadian Red Cross. This first of its kind project is aimed specifically towards addressing mental health challenges and providing wellness support for international students who are new to Halifax and facing increased isolation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Working in collaboration with 4 universities in the area, this project will mobilize volunteers for outreach, create an online support community for our students, help with developing coping skills through monthly virtual events, and distribute kits containing hand sanitizer, PPE, and important healthcare information translated into various languages. All of this will help begin to address the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on the social well-being and increased isolation that a lot of newcoming and returning international students are facing today. We would like to thank the universities for supporting this important project, as well as our community partners, churches, and student organizations. The Canadian Red Cross Emergency Support to Community Organizations Program, as well as the Government of Canada and Employment and Social Development Canada. We also encourage you to thank and tag these great organizations as you share thoughts about tonight's event on social media at Red Cross Canada and at ESDC_GC. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker, Mr. Grant Fitzpatrick. Mr. Grant has been the Mental Health Coordinator at the Canadian Mental Health Association for 10 years. In that time, Mr. Grant has presented to over 40,000 participants all over Newfoundland and Labrador in the hopes of stigma and decreasing the fear surrounding mental health among children and youth. Mr. Grant's message is simple. Communication is the key to dealing with mental health issues and mental illness in teens and youth. The more you understand, the less you fear. Knowing how and what to say when you communicate is important for youth, as when to ask for and seek help. It is important to understand the issues when talking to our friends, parents, and teachers about our mental health, and important to get answers when needed. Please remember to submit your questions through the chat feature on YouTube. And Mr. Grant, please go ahead.
Can everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to start the presentation off with talking about connecting during social distancing. First question many people ask is where to access information. So that's mostly the first thing people want to know. There are many services open to students, both on campus and off campus, in the community and online. If you are feeling isolated and alone during COVID-19, please reach out and speak with a trained peer supporter or counselor. You can contact the Provincial Warm Line at 1-855-753-2560 in Newfoundland from 9 to 12 a.m. daily. They are here to help and listen. If you feel anxious about COVID-19, not sure where to turn, you can contact the Mental Health Crisis Line. That's 1-888-737-4668. And if you're experiencing a mental health crisis currently, they're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If calling is not your thing, then it's not for a lot of people these days. You can try a crisis text line. It's free and confidential, available to anyone in Newfoundland and Labrador at any time. You can text TALK to 686868. Let a trained volunteer bring you from a hot, stressful moment to a cool, calm situation. Many types of information it's important to have readily available, especially during COVID-19. A lot of people, many types of anxiety and different stressors are increased in times of change. COVID-19 has brought change to almost every aspect of people's lives, and therefore greater anxiety. So getting accurate information and gaining an understanding of COVID-19 and your place in the situation of the pandemic is important to curbing your anxiety. The more you know, the more you understand, the less stress and anxiety you'll have. However, it's important to understand how much information, maybe too much information, and possibly overwhelming. It's important to get your information from a trusted source, campus information center, mental health information center, Canadian government, or a local government agency. The Canadian Mental Health Association is here to help, as well as many other government supported sites online, as well as in person. It's also important for your mental health not to become too overwhelmed with all the information available to you online and social media. We've become a society of information consumers. We feel we need to constantly be in contact with each other, everybody on our social media sites, and current events, especially because of the internet and 24-hour news channels. Our cell phones and social media, we feel the need to constantly keep up with each other. We need to try and shrink our world, or at least our world view and our social situations. Turn our social attention back to things you really need to worry about in the immediate future. Limit our time or negative, stressful social events, especially excessive news watching surrounding COVID-19 and other anxiety causing situations. You should kind of start with you, then your family, worry about university, getting those tasks completed, your community, your province, uh, and try and limit country and worldwide stressors. Um, People try to worry about everything all at once. It can become overwhelming, and you could cause a serious anxiety situation. The main factors you need to worry about in your immediate area. It may be helpful to you to stay in contact with friends and family back in your home country, um, so you can feel well informed about friends, family, and situations back home. Um, so, how do you know when you're becoming overwhelmed? Uh, you need to know when it's time to pull back, to reevaluate things, to understand what's most important. Lessen your schedule when you feel like things are too stressful or have too much going on. Start with what you really must do as a starting point, and move out from then to needs or things that have to get done, and then wants. Make sure to build in time for yourself to de-stress uh, and have time to calm down. You need to build things into your life that you enjoy. You need to re engage as much as you can with activities that you enjoyed before COVID 19. Try to do them either on your own, if you used to do them with a group, or if you can do them within your bubble. If not, you can try doing them online or on the phone. The important thing is that you still have ways to de stress and calm down almost on a daily basis. Our anxiety levels are elevated most of the time now due to change in almost every aspect of our life. And it's also important that we understand that it's okay to not be okay. It's just as important to maintain your mental health as it is your physical health. Uh, but it's okay to not tell everybody that you're feeling fine and you're doing okay, especially if you aren't. Um, it's okay to feel how we feel. If we don't feel okay or we feel scared, anxious, and upset, it's important to have people we can talk to about these subjects. People, friends, family. Toxic positivity is a new term we use, especially on social media. It's a new societal view that we must be doing something, otherwise, we're just wasting time or being productive. You may have noticed on Facebook uh, and Instagram and other social media sites when people had to stay at home. They were showing that they were baking, they were cleaning, exercising, studying, they were socializing on computers, starting new groups, renovating their house. Um, but it's okay to not be okay, to understand that you are stressed and take some time to deal with your stress in whatever way that looks like for you. There are many ways to de stress and ground yourself, even during a pandemic. You can go for a walk, either by yourself, socially distanced with a friend, or walk with a group around the track, again, socially distanced. Try to keep a routine. That way you keep on top of what you need to do and when you need to do it. It's important to reconnect with friends and peers, either online or over the phone. You can try relaxation techniques such as yoga, just sitting and relaxing, possibly meditation, or just relax and listen to music. It's nice to start a daily journal about how your day is. Try to think about all the positive things that occurred that day, and you can journal them. That way, every day can kind of end on a positive note or with a positive outcome. Uh, it's important to take a break when you need to or when you have to. Uh, Dealing with anxiety and stress for long periods of time, such as in the present pandemic, can both be mentally tiring and physically draining. Since there's no way to avoid a long term stressor, it's important to build in as much time as you need to relax and recharge, sometimes several times a day, taking breaks when you need to, especially from extended Zoom meetings or extended online conversations. Remember, change is a major cause of anxiety, and everyone's life has to some extent changed. It's important to make time to unwind, build in time to exercise and de stress. Put that into your routine so you do it daily and ritually. Make sure it's in your schedule. It's just as important as building time to take care of the bills, studying for school, and staying connected with family. It's also important to look for ways to laugh, have fun, tell jokes. The more you laugh, the more endorphins you create, the better you feel. Finally, it's important that you put yourself first. You are your most important priority above everything else. If you're not well, you can't take care of anyone else or yourself and your own needs. If you feel anxious or overwhelmed, scared about certain situations, these need to take priority over other things happening in your life. If you want to reach out and contact your informal resources when you feel this way, informal resources are friends, family, people you know, people you trust, people that you can talk to. You can move on to more formal resources, such as a warm line or a chat line. You can contact in Newfoundland the Association for New Canadians. In Nova Scotia and Halifax, that would be WINA. If need be, you can contact your local health line to seek help with a physician. Go to a clinic at the university or mental health center, or a counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist. Always remember that there is help. You are not alone, and seek help if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant, for that knowledgeable presentation and all of the great advice. Please stay with us for the Q&A session at the end of the virtual event. I love the term that you used, toxic positivity, and how you explained the difference between formal and informal resources and the different ways that we can reach out to people. It's a great reminder for all of us. To all of our guests, please remember to submit your questions for Mr. Grant through the chat feature on the YouTube page, and we will select some for the Q&A portion after our next speaker. It is my great pleasure to now introduce our second guest speaker, Miss Carol Shirley. Miss Carol has worked as a nurse and fitness expert prior to her current work as a psychologist. Hi, Carol. She combines
Hello.
her life experience and knowledge as a psychologist in a very compassionate way to support her clients. Miss Carol successfully integrates her love of mind-body connection with her traditional training. She creatively and intuitively integrates meditation, guided imagery, emotional freedom technique, and Reiki into her work, empowering her clients to help themselves. Enigma Physical, Emotional, and Mental Health Studio offers psychological counseling, meditation, yoga, reflexology, and holistic nutritional counseling. Please remember to submit your questions through the chat. And Miss Carol, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I like to talk a little bit about COVID, maybe some coping strategies, some of the things that I really just want you to think about as you move forward. And I guess the first thing there is to recognize yourself as your own self-expert. You know yourself better than anybody else knows you, and so please use what you know about yourself to decide your level of wellness. Typical first-year students face many challenges, and I know that probably all of you are not first year, but I want you to reflect on some of the challenges you might have had in your first year and think about the incoming students who are here for the first time. Many students for the first time when they come to university come not having been responsible for all of their meals, not being responsible necessarily for their day-to-day getting groceries or needing to take care of their personal needs or even just buying toothpaste. And so we expect that those things will be challenging for first year students. This year with COVID, it's a very different situation, and I expect that by now many of you have noticed many of the differences. Those of you who were here previously, it would be very useful to help first year new students to understand where their resources are. Your universities are little micro cities, and there's so many things within that little micro community that you're in. Your international student advisor, there's counseling, there's medical, there's many resources on your campus that are available for you. I know there's a lot of stigma sometimes in accessing those resources, but I'd say move beyond your pride and recognize that there's no shame in asking for help. We all need help from time to time. It's about being a human being and recognizing that even though you are unique in many ways, as a human being, we have very many commonalities. And the effects on our mental health in difficult times is one of those. Many people don't even understand that there's a mind-body connection, that if our body's not happy, our mind's not happy, and if our mind's not happy, our body's not happy. Do you know that if we hold a thought for as little as 17 seconds, that thought affects us at a biological level? And so think about the thoughts that you're holding. I want you to understand also personal responsibility. Personal responsibility is about being responsible for yourself, what you say, what you think, and what you do. That's the only things you have control over. We can't control what other people say, think, or do, but we can control what we say, think, and do. And so it's time to accept responsibility for yourself, especially not being in your country of origin. You really need to protect yourself and your personal, physical, and mental health safety. If you're coming from a country that's typically warmer than where you are now, very often there's a type of depression that many will experience. It's called seasonal affective disorder. And it happens because our day, our sunlight is getting shorter and shorter. Right up until December 21st, it's getting shorter. And so what's happening is that your body's not able to process vitamin D the way it typically would. A resource for that is a local drugstore. There's what's called a sun lamp. Get yourself a sun lamp and increase your vitamin D intake. That will help keep that depression a little bit at bay. And so be mindful of that. I think that it's really important as well to start, if you're well currently, take stock of your wellness tools. What's a wellness tool? Well, a wellness tool are the things that you do to help yourself feel better, to get over little humps, little bumps. It might be causing us maybe some distress. There's learning curves to everything. If you don't know what APA style is and you have to have a learning curve for that, that's going to take a little more time than normal. But there's a lot of people around that campus who already know what it is. So go to your library and ask for the resources, or go online. I'm sure you'll find much of them there. I want you to understand that there's things you can control and things you cannot control. So work to control the things you can. That would be within your personal responsibility and your ability to control them. Recognize that we're in the midst of a paradigm shift. It's a huge paradigm shift. With COVID and the way things have changed, everything is different than it was for all of us, even those of us who live here who are used to the way things were. They're not the way they were anymore. And so there's that big learning curve. And it's really nice to normalize ourselves by having those conversations with other people who are feeling similar. And so please find the courage to speak up and to have engagements with other people. Your mental health very highly correlates with your physical health. What you think is incredibly important. We have a saying energetically that says, what you think about, you bring about. And if I'm thinking everything is terrible, everything is terrible. And so notice what it is that you're thinking about. I think my most important message for you tonight is to understand that self-compassion is one of the greatest gifts you could give to yourself. We're all very compassionate when it comes to other people. We're all very able to stand in their shoes, proverbially, for a moment and to understand how they might be feeling. But if you can step into your own shoes for a minute, show yourself some compassion, say things, have conversations with yourself that reflect that compassion. The voice in your head, we all have it. If it's not a voice in your head that you need to be ashamed of, but if that voice in your head is negative and critical of you, then you're going to give yourself a really hard time. I'd say if that voice in your head is negative, then find at least a neutral place. You don't have to like it, but you do need to get along with yourself. And so self-compassion is a little step further where you can step back and you can acknowledge that, hey, this is really hard. It's okay to say that. This is really hard. I'm really struggling right now. I'm sorry that I'm struggling right now. And so really show yourself some compassion all of the time. Yeah. It's also important, one of my measures is kind of like, I ask myself, if my best friend was feeling the way I'm feeling right now, what would I say to him or her? Then that's what I'm going to say to me. Be careful of self-judgment. It's really, sometimes we would judge ourselves even for sitting on the couch for 2 hours and watching a movie. We never judge anyone else for it. And so stop judging yourself. Don't be critical. Be your own best friend. Empower yourself. Inspire yourself to meet the goals that you've set out to meet. I guess what I'd like to say is really talking about isolation for a moment and recognizing that we can be socially isolated but not lonely. There are those of us who are highly sensitive people, and we're introverts as well, and we prefer to be somewhat socially isolated. That's how we recharge. There are those of us who are extroverts who really need to be with people to feel like they're recharging and that they feel alive by that. And so recognize yourself. What's your preferences? What do you need? And only you can give yourself what you need. And so be kind. We have reactive loneliness. It's a type of loneliness that we experience during life transitions, death, divorce, breakups, those sorts of things. And I think that it's really about adjusting to something different. And so we're all having some level of reactive loneliness because of COVID. It also becomes, when it becomes chronic, or chronic just means that it's really problematic, we're more likely to be dissatisfied with the way things are and have difficulty making changes. Loneliness is typically defined by people's level of satisfaction with their level of connectedness in life, or their perceived social isolation. And so think about the things that you really want, how you want to connect with other people. How does that work for you? It's different for all of us. And so remember who you are, think about what you need, and be your own best friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Carol, for that insightful presentation. I'm sure everyone in our audience learned a lot from that, and I know I picked up a few tips too. I really love the reminder that education is our students' top priority. That really can get lost in the shuffle sometimes, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
And the difficulties with the harsh winter weather, I know that's something that's really difficult for me too, ever. So it's nice to always acknowledge that. We are now going to begin the question and answer portion of the evening. So I am still looking at the live chat. If you guys do have a question, please send it in and we will get it to our guest speakers to answer. The first question I have here is for you, Mr. Grant. How can we explain to the people closest to us that we need some time to ourselves without hurting their feelings?
Mm-hmm.
A certain level of anxiety at the moment. And we can explain to our friends and family, especially since they're the ones closest to us, that uh, we're experiencing a little differently or a little worse at the moment. We need some time to decompress. We need some time to understand. Need some answers to some questions. Um, and people that we know, friends and family, and people that we trust, should give us that time. We should all be more patient with moving into new things and changing our lifestyles. At all, or even or more so rapidly at the moment. Change is surrounding everybody, and different people react differently to change. Some people embrace it, some people become extremely anxious or fearful. Um, and it's important to, like I said in my portion of the presentation, it's important to express how we're feeling to people that we know, so they understand if we can't engage in the same things they can right now. It may take us a little longer or some more time.
That was a great answer. I think that that's all exactly right. The people that are closest to us, I'm sure, will be able to understand that everyone's needs are changing, and they're going to be there to support us through all these changes that are happening so rapidly to everyone. Do you have anything to add to that, Miss Carol?
Um, I, I was thinking as you were talking, what I would just say to it that it's part of your personal responsibility to set that boundary. It's really just a boundary, and people who really care about us will respect those boundaries. I always say, thank you for asking, but no. And one of my mantras personally is if saying yes to you means saying no to me, I can't do it because I am going to build resentment to you and I love you too much to resent you. And so I literally use those words to say no to people on occasion. And I think that some people will come back and try and talk you into doing something that you don't want to do. But I would also recognize that as someone who's not willing to respect my boundary. And so set your own boundaries. You know what you need. I can't read your mind. People can't read your mind. And if you don't call it, we don't know it.
That is so true. We're our own best advocates, and it's a really good reminder to, even though it can be hard, stand up for ourselves and really make our voices heard when we know what we need and focus on that. The second question I have here, and I'd like to hear both of your opinions actually, would be great. Miss Carol, why don't we start with you this time? Do you think that university age students have been more affected by the pandemic than others?
I think that's really hard to say more or less. It certainly interrupted your plans, perhaps your desire to do your university in a traditional way. outside of COVID, I think it might affect your experience. But I think that, at every age group, there's a level of responsibility, a level of things that have become much more difficult, much more restrictive. And so I don't really think it's affected any age group more. I just think it affects each age group differently.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes,
Mr. Grant, do you?
yes. As far as affecting it more, I think I can kind of agree that it affects all different age groups differently, but not so much more than anyone else. Every
Mm.
generation, I think, if you kind of look at the 20th century, has a time frame when there was a large change. I guess with the education and job search situations. It was in the 30s, 60s, and 80s, 90s, and I guess again now, where people are kind of looking at they're getting their education, they're going to be looking for employment. How is that going to be affected by COVID-19, which can exacerbate or add to their anxiety? But at the same token, governments are trying to come up with monies to pay all levels of workers, seniors, people in social sectors. So it's a it's just kind of a cross board situation.
I definitely agree. There's no one that hasn't been affected by what's going on. It's a global
Right.
situation that we're dealing with, and hopefully, by dealing with it together, we can get through it a little bit easier. It's nice to think that. So, I have one more question that I can ask you, and then we'll wrap it up for this evening. With the winter coming up on us so quickly, people are worried that without the sunshine and warm temperatures that we enjoyed all summer, it's going to be harder to socialize and get that outdoor exercise in. What would you say are some recommendations that the students can take in to keep their outdoor time up without freezing outside and keep socializing with their friends and family as well? Miss Carol?
I think we've been practicing for this since March. It's just the warmer, it changes every year when the colder weather comes. We tend to spend a little more time inside, and we've been doing a lot of that. And so continue that, but try and shake it up a little bit. Do something different. Listen to music that you really like. When the sun's out, get out in the sun to avoid that seasonal affective depression that I talked about. Get out in the sun as much as you can. Sit in sunny spots inside a building. Sit in sunny spots. Um, Dress warm. Learn how people in your environment are dressing to stay warm, and have clothing that will make you comfortable. And outside, I mean, it's we have ski hills, we have walking trails, we have places that you can go down to the waterfront and just lose yourself in the beauty of the environments and do things. It's like take a trip in your mind, do some meditation, do some things just to distract yourself from the fact that it's winter. I like to think about December 21st as that's the shortest daylight day of the year, but every day after that, right up until April, it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And so I get excited about that extra couple minutes a day. It's whatever's in your mind and whatever you tell yourself, however hard it's going to be, is a story you tell yourself. So change your story.
That is absolutely right. I agree. I'm going to let Mr. Grant answer that as well. And then I actually have another question in the chat that I'll ask you.
Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I kind of laughed for a second. Yeah, we've been preparing for winter and in the house for probably a very long time. Over here on the east coast of Newfoundland, we had a little situation called Snowmageddon that was not long after Christmas. we had 108 centimeters of snow in one shot, so we were pretty much in the house for quite the while now. Um,
Mhm.
so it's important to keep your mind challenged, do new things. If you need to get out, then maybe try snowshoeing around the park for a change,
Mhm.
or take up skiing outside if you can rent skis in your area. Meet new people, take on new experiences. If you've always wanted to learn about new subjects, or learn about things in your community, or in your field of interest at school, now is kind of the time. It's darker during. There's less daylight during the day. There's less time to be out, kind of taking in daylight activities. So it might be more important to take on some new indoor activities with your bubble, with a group that you know, or you can even change your old activities that you used to do to some type of online activity. Um, People are coming up with all kinds of interesting solutions with webcams. They're now engaging in activities that they used to engage in community centers out of round. Now they're engaging with them online. It's important to change it up and make sure that you are happy and content with what's coming throughout the winter.
Mhm.
That was great advice. It's amazing to think that
Mhm.
that huge snowfall was this year. It seems like about 4 years ago to me. But it's a good reminder of, we did go through some of this already during the first lockdown. So those skills and experiences are there. It will just take some time to remember. I'm going to ask one more question that came from the chat. And then, if it's okay with you guys, if more questions keep coming in, we'll get them to you and try to put some more information in our newsletter and send it out that way as well. Um, so,
Sure.
the last question I have here is about people living with family. So, there are homes where parents are living with young children and the parents are trying to go to school at the moment, or the students have a family with older generations living in the same household. Are there any tips or suggestions that you can think of that might help our students in those scenarios? Mr. Grant, I'll start with you.
I would take advantage if I have family living with me. I would take advantage of the fact that that may give me more time and opportunity to study, to kind of take in a few events to relax and calm down myself. Um, I would recommend anybody with young children or small children that although you may be taking on university from home, you are still taking on university. Ergo, you need time to study, write papers, do assignments. You may feel it's kind of a situation where you need to have your child home because you're home, but a lot like many people who are now working from home, if you can enroll your child in limited daycare situations. I'm not really sure what it's like over in Nova Scotia at the moment. Here, you can a lot of daycares and day homes are open, even if it's for 2 or 3 days a week. There's just been a new government subsidy out in Canada for registered day homes, daycares. If people are having trouble having their children in, if they're on student loans or if they're going through school, probably not working a lot. But it's important to kind of try and separate your university experience or your university situation from your home and your life situation. Much the same way that many people are have to work from home and try and have their home office and time where they work, and then they separate that with the time that is family and evening and doing social activities.
That was a great answer. I loved all of that. It's such good advice for our students and really
Mhm.
for anyone. Like even for me working, a lot of that still applies to me now. There was another question in the chat that I'm actually going to ask you, Miss Carol, instead of responding to the same one. Um, this comes from Arthi Amlipur. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And it's how to engage with people who weigh high on the emotional side, not understanding bad listening skills. Is there something you can think of that would be helpful in that situation?
We asked me the question. I struck me funny, and then I lost it.
So I think the question is, what would be your advice for if there's someone in our lives who weighs high on our emotional feelings? They're not listening very well when we're talking and causing maybe more anxiety than helping.
It's a great question, and it's a very common sort of thing that, first of all, you have to kind of understand your need to have them hear you. And is it really necessary that they hear you? Or is it more important that you're saying what it is you want? Again, to me, it's really all about boundaries. Sometimes people who are high on the emotional scale are usually concerned or worried, and they're going beyond their own personal responsibility, and they're trying to control you to control their own emotions. And so sometimes we have to set up really strong boundaries that say, you know what, these are the kinds of things I can't share with that person because they can't handle them. And so I'm going to give it to somebody who can. And think about the kinds of things you share with that person. And if it's, too much for them, then find somebody else. But it's a real boundary issue for me.
That's a great reminder that we, again, we're our own advocates more than anything, and
Hmm.
we have to set boundaries and remember that, and people who are close to us will respect that.
Hmm.
Mr. Grant, do you have anything to add? And then I think we're going to wrap up. And if there are any other questions, we'll get them to you and then add some answers into our newsletter.
Hmm.
We're all anxious. We're all going through change. Change is probably the only constant we've got left. Um, it's very easy to get wrapped up in stress about I can't walk down this aisle at the grocery store anymore. I have to stand over here when I get coffee now. Everything has changed. It's important that we just kind of understand that when we're going out so we don't become aggravated, stressed, and upset with different situations. Things in certain areas have slowed down, and we need to kind of go with the flow with society the way that's going. um, it doesn't help to become upset and aggravated, although it is easier when you have much higher anxiety. um, just then try to get everyone to slow down and take your time. This is not something that's going to be over next week, so we kind of have to get used to moving through uh, life in the mode it's in, and moving back and forth from more restrictive to more open.
Hmm.
That's such a good reminder that this is not going to be a short lived situation, and everyone needs to take the time to pace themselves and get used to what's happening now and remind ourselves that there's no going back to February,
Hmm.
unfortunately, at this point.
No, I don't think.
So, with that, yeah, with that last question answered, we're ready to wrap up the first Wellness for International Students virtual event. Thank you for all of our guests for joining us and our fabulous guest speakers. Mr. Grant, Ms. Carroll, thank you for lending your expertise to our students today. I'd also like to thank the amazing staff at WINA for this event idea, the Canadian Red Cross for sponsoring this series of virtual events. Don't forget to register for our next session on November 4th, which also includes the wellness baskets. And please look out for the post-event evaluation form that will help us organize the best events possible for you. There will also be upcoming opportunities to sign up as volunteers for WINA. Please visit our website for more information at www.winacanada.org. We can't wait to see you at our next event, and have a great evening, everyone.